I've been openly criticizing some, not all, but some of the protesters, particularly most of them, in my personal opinion, that stormed into the Capitol in Michigan. Luckily, this sort of stuff isn't happening in Las Vegas, but there are a lot of extremists out there in Michigan that think they can say and do whatever they want with their AR-15s dressed as G.I. Joe. Now there are people that are part of some of these groups that have done this, that some of the comments they're making on social media are just absolutely disgusting. But before I get to some of those comments, Michigan had another one of those protests today. It happened this morning. And we had more controversy and more buffoons that decided to do some disgusting and evil things. And our producer, Jason Stein, is going to discuss that with us and get into that a little bit further. Jason, what can you tell us what happened there in Michigan this morning?
Well, unlike what you're saying, Brian, about some of the protests we've seen here in, locally, which have been actually very peaceful protests, this one is actually goes a step further. These are actually armed protesters who organized a protest in Lansing at the state capitol. And what happened this morning, as you referenced, was a fight broke out at the Capitol. Now, one of these people, I guess you could call an extremist among extremists, pulled out. Let me get this exact description for you here. Someone was walking around with a garbage can, a gun, and an American flag. That person then pulled the American flag out of the garbage can, and hanging from the American flag was like a Barbie doll with brown hair that was the likeness of Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and she was hanging from a noose. She was hanging from a noose. Now, what's very interesting is that somebody actually in that crowd attacked that protester, saying that this is basically hate speech, has gone too far, and a big fight broke out, and the police had to break it up. So basically, you have extremists fighting with extremists. We got some of these pictures. I'm going to ask our social media guy, Chris, to throw those up online so you can see them for yourself. But this is, again, unlike some of the protests that we've seen here in Nevada, this is a step in a violent direction, actually.
See, this is why I'm talking about leadership, okay? And if the president wants to tweet out, liberate Michigan and liberate some of these other states, and wants to say that these people seem to be very responsible people and good people, he also needs to call out hatred. He needs to call out some of these people at these protests that are doing some of these awful things. I'm not saying, say, all these people are extremists. I'm not saying that he needs to say all these people are bad people. But when something like this happens, it is leadership, regardless of whether they're Republican or Democrat, to get up there and just say, guys, this can't happen in a democracy. It can't happen.
And I think that's completely over the top, but you have to look at what Governor Whitmer has done herself.
What does that have to do with what I just said?
First of all, she didn't apply for FEMA until late March. Yesterday, she actually took the license away with no due process of a 77-year-old barber. She had a ordinance where you couldn't actually visit your friends. You could buy liquor from the grocery store, but you couldn't buy gardening seeds for your garden. And now she has said she's kind of taking the fight to this militia, but she is now claiming that anyone who protests who has a weapon on them under any circumstances will be arrested on the spot.
Okay, so here's, again, my issue with what you just said.
What's
my issue is this. You took 2 seconds and said, well, I obviously don't agree with that.
Well, yeah, I don't agree with that. I think it's over the top, and I'm not shocked that there's an extremist involved in that at all. Why would I be?
All right, you got to let me finish. I got 2 words in there. You took 2 seconds to defend it, and then you talked about Whitmer and the policies you disagree with. What I'm talking about is not her policies right now. We can get into that, but that's a separate subject. What I'm talking about is the President of the United States.
You're flipping it, and you're blaming it on Trump.
If you could, I'm not blaming it on Trump.
You are.
Okay, if you're obviously not listening to what I'm saying, so in your rage of anger, if you could just listen.
I'm not angry at all.
Okay, if you could just listen to me for 30 seconds and pay attention to what I'm saying, okay? What I'm saying is showing leadership in a situation like this after the fact. While you want to liberate certain states and you want to promote protest, or as I like to call them, Trump rallies, at the same time, when you see people like this threatening the life of the governor, I have some comments here if you'd like to hear them. Remove Whitmer, the baby killer tyrant. Got to go grab her by the hair and drag her down the street for everyone to see. Okay? I have another guy who actually went to the rally who said, I keep saying the very same thing. We have people calling her the C word. She looks higher than a kite. The point being is that there are some people, not all of them, but some people at these rallies that are promoting not just hatred, but violence towards the governor. And all I want from the president, and by the way, I don't think it's asking too much here. I think I'm being very fair. All I want from the president is to take 20 seconds out of his day and say, those of you that are protesting peacefully, keep up the great work. I wouldn't even have a problem with that. Just say, for this man who took a Barbie doll and a rope around her neck, and for all others that are threatening violence against the governor, it needs to stop now and it won't be tolerated. That's all I want from the president. That has nothing to do with policy, and I think that is a very fair opinion to have here.
Another couple of comments on social media. She needs to have her ass beat. Most of these politicians need a good ass whoop and punch their lights out. When someone suggested the guillotine, a man named Thomas Michael Lampier responded, good old-fashioned bullets work better, but I like your enthusiasm. Wonder how long till she's hit with a shotgun. Maybe this is why she said no guns at the protest. Maybe.
I think that's a fair reason when you have people threatening your life.
Not to mention the lives of the police officers, the Capitol Police that have to protect the Capitol. Does anybody care about? I'm sorry, I'm going to get opinionated here because it's ridiculous. Does anybody care about the lives of the police officers and their safety?
Yeah. So good point, Jason. So for those of you, JD, do you understand where I'm going with this?
I can talk now.
Do you understand where I'm going with this?
I'm making sure I can talk.
Yeah, you can talk.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Yeah, it would be great if Donald Trump would say that is over the top and that shouldn't take place. That would be outstanding, Brian. I understand where you're going with this. I get it, and I agree. It's totally over the top. I believe in peaceful protests to serve a purpose. Like, for example, I have a protest coming up on Saturday. Reopen Nevada is the purpose of it. Democrats and Republicans are invited. It starts, and I'm going to promote it really, really quickly here, but it starts at every single DMV, Henderson, Sahara, and Durango, converge on the Strip, and end at Alibaba parking lot. For example, that is a peaceful protest, and we're asking that no long guns be there, that we prefer people weren't armed under those circumstances, and we're likely going to walk the Strip. We expect it to be a strong turnout with some Republican, and there are a couple of Republican congressional candidates are going to be speaking at that, but that's totally different from what actually is happening or has happened in Michigan. That being said, Michigan has had arguably the strictest standards and guidelines. And in my opinion, Governor Whitmer's, the things that she is saying are not conducive to uniting Michigan. I think that she is kind of asking for the fight.
You think that these protests are conducive to uniting Michigan?
Of course not. Absolutely not. I don't agree with what they're doing at all. I mean, Brian, they had a Facebook group called Michiganders Against Quarantine. Had 400,000 people in the group. Facebook shut it down last night despite the fact that they were following all the rules because the owner of the group, Garrett Soldano, accurately reported yesterday when, again, this happened. A 77-year-old man in Michigan, a barber, who had no chance of keeping his business open without staying up. He couldn't just shut his business down, which a lot of people are in that situation. But Governor Whitmer just took away his license with zero due process whatsoever. Things like that piss people off. If you have a business and you've had one for 5 to 10 years and you've worked at it for 90 hours a week and you don't get a major loan from the PPP and suddenly that business is gone in 3 to 6 months due to no fault of your own just because you are in a state that decides that your business is not essential or that it can't open, you literally have to rely on the government at that point, Brian, and you're angry about it. And there's a lot of small business owners in the country. By the way, 99% of small businesses or businesses in general in the United States are small businesses. But there's a lot of people in the country right now that are in that situation where they're going to lose their small business. The same situation would apply to someone who went to school for some particular craft and they picked up student loans over the course of 4 or 5 years and they still owe money on that. And they had a job based on what they went to school for. If that job is gone after this is over, what do? You
know, you write your representative. You write your representative, you fill out petitions to recall the governor, and you peacefully protest. That's what you do. In the state of Wisconsin, the Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin struck down the stay-at-home order. The people that were against it went through the legal process. Yeah, they contacted the representatives. The representatives filed a lawsuit on their behalf, the ones that agreed with them.
And Tom Tiffany won yesterday.
Okay, and a Republican won a Republican seat in a very conservative district in Wisconsin. That's true. But the point is that you ask the question, what do? You don't go show up at rallies with nooses and Barbie dolls and say, drag the governor out by her hair.
I'm not suggesting that at all, Stein. And I don't appreciate you implying that I'm suggesting that, because I'm not.
No, but you said people are angry.
They are angry.
And the topic
there's a lot of angry people across the United States right now because of the fact
you asked, what do you do?
That they are I'm saying at that point, I'm not saying what do you do from a protest standpoint. I'm saying what do you do from a life standpoint.
Well, that's what he just said.
No,
you're right to your policy.
How is that going to put money in your pocket? How is that going to feed? How is that going to feed your family,
he just
Brian?
Gave you an example. Look what happened in Wisconsin.
If you're suddenly reliant
for unemployment.
Okay, if you're suddenly reliant on the federal government for shelter and food and money, what are you supposed to do at that point?
Well, it's what you do to get by.
There's a lot of entrepreneurs in this country that aren't, huge companies like Walmart or even Las Vegas casinos or even Barstool Sports, for example, digital companies. But there are a lot of people in the United States that have businesses or are employed by small businesses that are going to be unemployed in the next. I mean, there's already been 100,000 small businesses that have to shut their doors forever so far. But they're going to be unemployed likely in the next 3 to 6 months. And when all this is over, they're going to have to rely on the federal government, or possibly a bank loan if they have money saved up, on the federal government to survive.
All right. So
if that happens in too large of a number, we could seriously be looking at a socialist United States. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that, Brian. They're afraid of capitalism being taken away from the United States.
Well, I'm gonna stay on what we started with this segment. That to me,
I definitely expanded that. I agree.
To me, that is a different subject than what we are talking about. What I am specifically talking about is some of these Nimrods in Michigan, and there are some Nimrods across the country that are extremists, and these types of extremists need to be called out for it. I feel bad for Governor Whitmer to have to deal with death threats, and I feel bad for anybody who's had to deal with death threats. I even feel bad to an extent to the guy who recorded the Arbery slang. I had his back. People should not be threatening his life. Nobody should be threatening a politician's life. Nobody should be intimidating and using those things and saying those types of things on social media. So Governor Whitmer of Michigan appeared on The View, and she talked about these armed protests that were scheduled for today, and we just discussed that. Here's what she had to say about it.
Confederate flags and Nazi symbolism. These have been really political rallies where people come with Confederate flags and Nazi symbolism and calling for violence. This is not appropriate in a global pandemic, but it's certainly not an exercise of democratic principles where we have free speech. This is calls to violence. This is racist and misogynistic. And I ask that everyone who has a platform uses it to call on people to observe the best practices promulgated by the CDC and to stop encouraging this behavior, because it only makes it that much more precarious for us to try to re-engage our economy, which is what everyone says they want us to be able to do.
I could not agree with her more. There is no place for Confederate flags. There is no place for this type of intimidation. There is no place for threatening the life of the governor. She was asked if she is in fear for her personal safety, and here's what she had to say to that.
Well, I would be not truthful if I said it didn't bother me. It certainly does. I'm fortunate that the Michigan State Police is an incredibly talented professional organization that oversees the security of myself and my family, and I'm grateful for that.
So she also went on, and guys, there's nothing okay with this. She said that there are some lawmakers that are actually scared to go to work. Have a listen to this.
We have legislators who are showing up to work wearing bulletproof vests. That is disenfranchising thousands of people in our state if their legislator doesn't feel safe enough to go to work and to do what their job is. No one should stand in our way of doing our jobs. And I respect people's right to dissent, but that does not extend to endangering other people's lives, and we take it very seriously.
And make no mistake about it, and let me give out the phone number first, 702-257-5396 if you want to be a part of the program. Again, that number, 257-5396. Make no mistake about it, folks. When you threaten somebody's life, and some people have done that, when you show up with guns, and some of those people on social media threatening the life of the governor, she has all the right in the world to be scared and to be upset. Number, again, 257-5396. Let's go to Woody. Woody, you're first up. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Woody?
Hey, what's up, JD? My call is, as long as people are protesting and they're not doing anything illegal or hurting nobody, that's their right to protest. And as far as the governor and her death threats, people get death threats every day, and I don't see everybody.
So you're okay with that then? So you're okay with it?
I didn't say I'm okay with it. What I'm saying,
people
Brian,
get death threats all the time. You're undermining
don't ask
these
me
people.
questions. I'm trying to talk, dude. You
don't tell me. You don't tell me what to do. You don't have a radio show. I do. So if you don't like it, you don't have to call up.
We do, Brian. We do.
Okay. You don't have to call up if you don't want to. He hung up the phone.
Woody,
what a coward.
Good call. Actually,
that was a great call.
Do you think that Donald Trump gets death threats, Brian?
Okay. First of all,
do you?
First of all,
no.
Just because others get death threats.
I'm just asking you, do you think he does?
And I'm answering it by asking you. And I'm making a statement here. Just because other politicians get death threats doesn't make this right. So your question doesn't make any sense.
I'm not saying that it's right at all. I'm just
if Donald Trump gets death threats.
Woody made a point, and I agree with that. I believe that a lot of politicians do get death threats.
And what's the point of making that point? What are you trying to say?
Do you think that Donald Trump gets death threats?
I would imagine. I would hope he doesn't. But if he does, I would support. I would say the exact same thing. So what's the point of bringing that up? Please explain to me what's the point of bringing up other people getting death threats.
It was just a question, Brian.
And I'm asking you why you asked that question. Why would you ask that?
Because Donald Trump's a politician that is hated by a lot of people, just like Gretchen Whitmer apparently is hated by a lot of Michiganders.
And you know what I'll say? Like many Republicans wouldn't say. I'll be honest with you, and I'll say any person in society that threatens the life of another individual is a scumbag. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I don't care if it's Whitmer. And for somebody to call up and make no mistake about it, that guy who just called up was diminishing.
So you think he was justifying it by saying that other politicians get death threats?
I'm not necessarily saying he was justifying it. Listen to my words. I'm saying he was diminishing how scared she is. And to call up and say, well, other people get death threats, that's exactly what he was doing. And guess what? I'm not going to do that on this show. I would say the exact same thing if people were threatening the life of any Republican in office. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to John. John, you're next up on the Vegas Take.
Hey, what's up, John?
Hey, man. Let's call these protests really what they are. These are white trash block parties for men with little tiny penises. I mean, that's really all they are. And this does not end well.
Hey, wait a second. You shouldn't talk about Wayne Allen Root like that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The bigger your gun, the smaller your penis. And all these protesters are all white trash. It's white trash. If you're seen at one of those protests, you should be embarrassed.
JD, would you like to respond to that?
But here's the thing. I think we're going to relive the 60s. I think we're going to go through a series of assassinations. I hate to say this. It's extremely dark, but I really do believe it's going to happen. There is no way on God's green earth the founders of the Constitution envisioned free speech being show up and threaten your governor with automatic weapons. Never, period. Woody, you're an idiot.
JD, do you want to respond to what he just said?
What, to saying that all protesters have small penises?
Well, I mean, is there anything you want to
say? I think he was talking about those protesters.
He's not talking about you.
I think he was talking about protesters that show up with guns and try to intimidate people.
Yeah.
And there may be something to that. There could be a situation where they have some type of insecurity and they feel more powerful having a weapon, knowing that they could kill somebody. I suppose that there's some truth to that.
I think he was
I hope assassinations don't take place.
Well, I hope he's wrong too.
But as far as reliving the 60s, that could be a possibility. It really depends on what happens in the 2020 election and how fast the economy opens without shutting down, without literally millions of small businesses having to close permanently. Because at that point, they will be reliant on the federal government, and when that happens, you have no choice but to vote your pocketbook, and that is a way of literally stealing the next 4 or 5 elections.
Okay, so I don't think
I think there's and I don't know how you can actually argue against it at this point, Brian. All these businesses, like for example in Michigan, she chose not to apply for FEMA until late in the process, and then she blamed Trump for it. She didn't apply until the 24th. Okay,
again,
a lot of states started on March 3rd. What I'm saying is, Brian, that her not having PPP or PPE and not having necessary things to help stop the spread of the virus in Detroit is on her because she didn't apply for it early.
Gotcha. But nothing is on
She also actually forced nursing homes to take patients, along with 5 other Democratic states that are getting destroyed by this virus, by the way. But she forced nursing homes to take patients, Brian, that were sick,
okay,
that were in the hospital, that had tested positive. She forced those nursing homes to take those patients into their nursing homes, which was infecting a lot of older people, which was inflating the death rate, which is creating fear, which is allowing for these businesses and the economy to shut down. Okay. That's my point. Okay.
And my point has been this entire segment is talking about the protesters, those who are nut jobs, and that was my focus, not policy. But you're right. I mean, let's get back to the phone calls.
I think it's all related, Brian.
Okay. Well, let's get back to the phone calls. But you're right. The president's done nothing wrong in his response, but let's blame it all on the Democratic governors. 257-5396. Let's go to Barry. Barry, you're next on the Vegas tape.
Hey, what's up, Barry?
Hey, guys. How are you? I've never listened to your show before. I'm a drive-home Hannity guy, but I was out today, had the 720 on. And this statement is to Brian. Brian, I appreciate that that's your show. I'm sure you spend $750 a week or a month to have it. You have your opinion.
Okay, let's stop you right there.
There's two people on the show.
First of all, hold on a second. Nope. Now you're going to stop, and now I'm going to take over the conversation because you said something that is factually inaccurate. First of all, I do a show with somebody called J.D. Sharp. Second of all, I've been on the radio for 20 years. Third of all, I've never personally paid to be on the radio. So now that we've established the fact that you're a factually inaccurate and you're a dope, would you like to continue this conversation?
Or he's certainly ignorant to that particular part of the conversation.
The way you presented yourself on this phone call is you're an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about. So would you like anything else you'd like to say, sir? Didn't think so. Goodbye. Have a nice day.
Please come again.
Hey, Barry, really enjoyed that. Thanks for the call. Hey, that's the first time we've had someone call into our show in 2 years and say that they're huge Hannity fans, and they just caught us. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, considering that we're right after that he's right after us.
And what Brian was trying to tell him was that the plot of the show is that we have someone that leans left and we have someone that leans right.
Right.
And so hopefully he'll come back and he'll be able to hear a little bit more than a couple minutes, and he'll be able to hear the argument.
God forbid that somebody is a Hannity listener and they tune into a radio station and somebody says something that they don't agree with. What a snowflake you are.
Rough.
What a snowflake you are.
I'm just happy that Brian has finally admitted that he is left.
No, I just disagree with a lot of the
I'm
things
admitting that he's left-leaning.
He is definitely left-leaning.
No,
I don't know how you can not say you're left-leaning.
The plot of the show, Brian.
the plot of the show. The plot is so idiots like that guy can call in and say ignorant things, and then I can hang up on them. That's the plot of the show. 257-5396. Let's go to Clyde. Clyde, you're next on the Vegas take.
Hey, what's up, Clyde?
Brian, very good show so far.
Thank you.
The people who are disobeying the directive, I want to preface, I'm not being flippant, but I look at it in all sincerity in the context of the Hegelian dialectic. Hegel doesn't say who's right or wrong nor moral. Here's how he's saying it. Here's where I'm at. This is how we human beings settle our problems. So for him, there's nothing really going wrong, and as negative as it is. And our history shows that. We protested in peace. We had eventually killed more British than we did. The South said they were going to leave, but eventually kill more people. So, and I'm sincere in this, and I studied it. This is how human beings save their thing. In all sincerity, not enough people have died yet. When that happens, then both parties will start playing the game. Oh, one last addendum. Brian, most of the time, he's the one who stays on subject. Now, I'm objective on it. Plus, he asks people a simple yes or no question. They don't answer it.
You're right.
So I would have to say that. He's more objective. And again, he can't get a straight answer from people.
You're right. Can I ask you a yes or I'll ask you a straightforward? How dumb was that last caller? Can I ask you that?
But you know what? The only way he's going to learn, immediately cut him off.
Again, that's what I do.
Know how consistent I am. You can't play games with him because
you're right, sir.
Time.
Well, sir, I like you. I'm never going to cut you off, and I appreciate your listenership of people like you, and I appreciate you calling in, my man. You sound like a great guy. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Clyde.
Appreciate that. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take more calls on the other side of the break in regards to this topic. I know we have a lot of people on hold, so we will – I promise you, we will try to get to all your calls. Just be patient with us. We got to take a break. We got to pay the bills. We got to pay our $7.50 as that last caller called in. We got to pay our $7.50.
I think he meant $750.
Oh, is that what he meant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Understandable.